Welcome to another episode of Heated Conversation. Super excited for this episode. We have the co-founder of Flip Fest in Crossville, Tennessee. Flip Fest is a gymnastics camp if you've never heard of it. It's a huge camp that is run by two former Olympians, John MacCready and John Roethlisberger. We have John MacCready with us today, kind of talking about his time as an athlete, what he's doing with Flip Fest, as well as college sports and kind of his viewpoint on both women's and men's college gymnastics. Super excited for this episode. Remember to subscribe, leave comments, share. Want to get this out to as many people. Tune into this episode. Hey, John, how are you?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing very, very good.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, absolutely. What is the weather like in Tennessee right now?
It's raining, man. It's cold and it's raining. This is a hunker down and movie day.
Yeah. So what do you guys typically do when it's this type of weather in Tennessee?
So you talk about like John and I or Tennesseans or camp?
Yeah, we could do all, but we can start with just Tennesseans. I'm here in Texas now. I'm originally from Minnesota, so I can kind of understand, some of that weather. But being in Texas, we kind of get the rain, but sometimes it feels like it's drought.
We get a lot of rain here. That's why it's so green and so beautiful. And it's kind of I think Knoxville is one of the greatest places to live in the country. The only downside is two things. One, we're in a valley, so the the allergies are really bad. So even people that don't have allergies, like myself, who never had in my life, have allergies here. And my wife who has awful allergies. She's in misery in those certain times of year. And then the second thing is just it's dreary in the wintertime because you get a lot of gray days for about a month or two. So those are the two little drawbacks. But other than that, the weather's amazing. And if you don't have allergies, then don't worry about it.
Yeah, no, that's good. And what are some indoor things that people like to do when there's weather days like that, or do people just kind of stay in their house?
No, people get out still. I mean, there's no weather. Well, if it gets real cold and snowy, everybody kind of stays in. But other than that, everybody just keeps rolling around. Especially Christmas shopping right now. So it takes a lot to stop that.
Yeah.
But as far as like kids stuff, fun things, you got the trampoline parks and the arcades and stuff like that. So those are big things when the weather's real bad.
No, I love it. And what do you guys do with camp, both you and John and the rest of the staff?
Yeah, well, right now camp's pretty much shut down for the season. We just shut it down after our last fall adventure camp. Now we sometimes have groups come in December or January or February, just not very many, might be one. So we're open year round, but this time is extremely slow. So it's just a time for us to catch our breath and start planning the next year. We've already broke ground on an addition to the dining hall to make it bigger, to kind of take our food service to the next level. So that's exciting. So we're constantly talking about that and planning that. And then, John and I have our hands on a lot of other things too. We own a lot of real estate in Knoxville. And so we're constantly managing that. And then John has his commentating that he's doing all the time. So, and then we got kids, which keeps us probably the busiest. So
yeah,
it flies by.
Now, when you talk about your season with the camp, what is the time frames and seasons kind of go? You talked about this fall adventure camp. When does camps happen? Like the summer camps happen, and then when is the fall adventure camps? And then typically when does things kind of start rolling back up for the next year?
Yeah, typically in March things start rolling back up. And then May is really busy getting ready for Flip Fest. And we have groups that come in March, April, May. But things really start rolling the first week of Cheer Fest and Flip Fest. And that runs 10 weeks. And then from that point on, we have groups in every weekend. Anywhere from you got Power Monkey, which is Dave Durante's CrossFit camp that he does twice a year there. That's huge. People have come from all over the world. You have the NIGC that comes in and does their camp. We have church camps. I run a big guitar retreat. We bring in the best guitarists in the world, called Woodshed Guitar Experience. So that runs from Thursday through Sunday, usually at the end of August, beginning of September. And we got the stage and the lights and fly rig, the whole thing. It's pretty awesome. So it can really lend itself to anything. It's just really what we always kind of consider it a blank palette, and you just tell us what colors you want and we'll help you make it happen. So
Yeah.
and so then that kind of carries us all the way into the fall adventure camps, and then pretty much all of November, a little bit of October is fall adventure camps. And then we pretty much shut it down, take some time off until things get geared up for the next season.
Oh, I love it. And
Yeah.
when did the vision and how did the vision of Flip Fest, or even just the grounds and, you know, having the facility and stuff come about, and where did it start?
Yeah. So John and I were on the 1996 Olympic team together. We became best friends before that. And we always talked about, kind of living near each other, raising kids and business and all this stuff. And a couple times a camp came up, like it'd be cool to own your own camp, like during the Olympics and stuff. But it was never something that we were going to be like, we're going to do this. It was just more of talk.
Yeah.
And then we all travel and do summer camps. And people still do it today, but back in the day, I did 10, 11 weeks of straight summer camps traveling. And my first one was a small boys camp, 50 boys in Knoxville, Tennessee at Knoxville Gymnastics Training Center. His name's Phil Savage that used to own it. Great guy. And he hired me to come out. I lived in Los Angeles at the time and be the special guest at this camp. Long story short, I got there, turned around. It was this beautiful woman. And I said, I'm going to marry that girl. Moved back to Los Angeles. Obviously, I got the girl. And then I went back to Los Angeles, packed all my stuff up, and came to Knoxville until she finished college. She was going to UT getting her business degree. And when I was there, Phil Savage asked me to make this. Can I help make this camp bigger? And the camp was just kids would come and stay with families, and mostly local kids. And I said, well, if you want me to be involved, I'd love to be involved, but I want to rename the camp, and I also want to make it like a camp. We should get hotels where the kids can come stay in hotels, and we have canteen. So we had, like, one of the hotel rooms was a canteen, and they took school buses back and forth to the gym in the hotel. And my wife and I kind of just jumped in, and it just kind of started from there. I mean, I never even asked my wife to do anything. She just started, like, taking reservations and, I'll answer these emails. Next thing you know, she's designing everything. Like, she built the whole, how the whole registration process worked. And I mean, she did a lot at the beginning. And then, so it just kind of went from there, grew from 50 kids, 100 kids, 200 kids, 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week. And I kept asking Roethlisberger, because I brought him as a guest, if he wanted to be a part of it. And he was in Minnesota at the time. He's like, no, I don't think so. And then one day he ended up in Jacksonville, Florida. And because of some real estate stuff I was doing, I ended up in Ocala, Florida. So we were talking a lot. And I brought up the camp again. He's like, no. And then a week later, he just calls me. And he's like, hey, man, I've been thinking about this camp thing. I want to do it. I was like, all right. So we first started looking in Florida, and we were just going to move Flip Fest to Florida. And we had a property there we were looking at. And then my friends in Tennessee were like, man, you got to do it in Tennessee. The weather's better. There's no gators. You can get a lake. It's cheaper, all this stuff. So I was like, all right, we'll look when we're up there. And it was like the fourth property. And John and I, we had already seen some other ones that we didn't really like. And we got to where Flip Fest is, and it was just blank land. You couldn't even, where camp is, you couldn't even really get onto it because it was so overgrown with forest and stuff. And so we first saw it from the other side of the lake off of the dam. And we both looked at each other like, well, this is it. And so we made an offer on it and got it. And the rest is history. It took a lot to get it all done, financing that kind of money. And then also, I mean, we had to build our own, sewage treatment facility, and, it was like all kinds of stuff. It was a big deal,
Yeah.
But now we can sleep. I think it's around 400, close to 400 people, sleep and feed 400 people. And it's just a little slice of heaven for us.
Yeah. And what year did you guys officially open for operations at the current location?
2006.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And now, how did it start? So how many, say your first camp in 2006, how many campers did you guys have, and how many weeks did you guys do? And then what has been the evolution of it till now?
Yeah. So we wanted to do it in 2005, but it was just, we wanted to already have our new facility then, but there was no way we were going to pull it off in time and find it. So, and get it built. So we did one more time in Knoxville, and we had 800 kids. And that was John's first year kind of as an owner. And then to make the numbers work, we had to double in capacity to jump to the next level of having our own facility. So that was pretty scary, but we ended up doing it. And we went to 1,600 kids, I think, that next year. And then, we've gone all the way up to having 3,000 kids a summer.
Wow.
And we used to do 11 weeks. We might have done, I think we tried 12 one time, but we used to do 11, and now we're down to 10. We did 10 now. Well, actually, I think we did 9 last year because we added the cheerleading. So it's either around 9 or 10 weeks now.
Nice.
And the reason why we do that, it's not that we're getting smaller. It's just that, if you have 2 weeks that have 100 kids, because it's towards the end of the summer, 120 kids, it's better just to combine the weeks and have one big week. So that's why we for years we had 12 weeks, and the last week was because your pool gets so small because so many kids are back in school that the week just gets really tiny.
Yeah. And what has been the vision for you in Roethlisberger in regards to what you guys want this camp to kind of be? At least from my experience being a coach there, some of the things that I kind of seen is the connections that you make, right? With other coaches, there's a lot of people who probably got coaching jobs because of the connections that they made there, as well as, the athletes. I think they probably learned a lot about themselves just because they have opportunities to do things that they probably may not be able to at their home gym, just because their facility just may not be at that point, or their coaches just may not have the knowledge yet to be able to coach them at their current potential.
Right.
So when you and Roethlisberger kind of started to really do this, what was your guys' vision and purpose for the camp that you wanted the athletes and the coaches to kind of get out of it?
Well, I mean, first of all, you're coming there for gymnastics and to learn gymnastics. And that's kind of a given. Our first question from parents is like, is my child going to learn a lot of gymnastics? It's going to get this skills and get their back handspring. And we are very honest with them. And we're like, look, I think your child's going to learn a lot and get skills, but they're there for a week and a week only. So it's not a lot of time. So our goal is, one, if you're just talking about skills, is to, if they're working on a skill that they're kind of almost there, but they don't have it yet, never made it, maybe this environment or different coach, hearing other things from different coaches, and also just being motivated by being in a different environment, because Flip Fest is a very electric environment, they might get that skill. And usually that happens. But the number one thing we really strive to do, and this is for campers and coaches, is to be a place that recharges you and motivates you for the rest of the year, that you could refer back to and find motivation on your down days and grab energy from, we call it the Flip Fest energy, of that energy that just makes you go, I can do this, I can get through this, and really letting kids understand and know what they're capable of doing. You know, 99% of these kids aren't going to the Olympics. 90% of them aren't doing college gymnastics. But those 90% are so important to this world that is so much bigger than gymnastics. So if we can instill in them what it means to be a gymnast and how you use those same traits in the real world, that's our main goal, is for that kid to come in, not really know what they're getting into, and leave and go, man, the world is my oyster. I can accomplish anything I put my mind to with hard work. That's the goal.
Yeah. And how did the special guest kind of part of it, you know, because I know you said when you started with that boys team, that the boys camp, that you were a special guest. And so did that kind of was that kind of what you wanted to have? Because I know a lot of, you know, either former Olympians are on come to the camp, as well as collegiate athletes and collegiate coaches. So kind of what was the thought process with that being a part of the camp?
I mean, I just think it's important for kids to meet their heroes in anything you do. So for us to bring in the top gymnasts in the world, we want them to be able to ask them questions, rub shoulders with them, and you know, just kind of understand what it means and what it took to get to where they're at, and for them to just see that they're just like you. I always say, like, look, they don't fly in on a cape, you know, they don't got a cape, you know, they're great, they're amazing, but they were you, and you can be them if you work hard enough.
Yeah. What is your favorite part of camp? Like, what kind of gets you energized, or what gets you excited about camp when you think about camp, and then when you're going through it?
My favorite part of camp probably is just the overall sound of it. You know, you have this property, it's 150 acres with a lake and all this stuff, and for a big part of the year it's very quiet. You know, we were there just for Thanksgiving. My family, we all went there for Thanksgiving, and it's amazing. It's beautiful, very quiet, very private, but it has a different feeling. And as soon as camp starts, it's just a certain sound that you hear from the music, because music's big for us, and the beat and the voices and the screams. And you know, you might be walking through the camp and you hear a kid just get their first, you know, double back, and then at the same time you hear a kid screaming off the ropes course, you know. And that sound never gets old. And that was probably the most surprising thing to me when we first opened. You know, it was a year, 6 or 7 months of original like hard construction, because we had to build that entire thing out from everything. There wasn't even electricity or water on the property. So all that happened in that time, and a lot of work John and I put in the ropes course. And so you're in that situation and just hearing forest and nature, you know, very quiet, just John and me. And we'd say to each other a lot, like, can you imagine what's going to be like to hear kids like walking down here? And we would say that over and over again. And then the first day of Flip Fest there, to hear that, and the jet skis going, and kids on the ropes course and swimming, and it was just like that life was, it was just so cool, and it never gets old.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. No, and you know, for anybody who hasn't really been there, it is quite the experience, you know, just like you have said, from the intros, you know, when you come in, and the way, you know, camp starts and the camp ends the same way it starts, right? It comes in with energy, it leaves with energy. So it's not like, you know, because the hardest thing sometimes, especially no matter how long a camp is, if a camp is 2 weeks, if it's a week or whatever, if it's even 2 days, it feels like the day before, or the day, like the last day, it just feels like all your energy is like left. And no matter the duration of the camp, right? And being able to like re-energize them and remind them of all the work that they did and the energy that they had to leave with them, right? Because a lot of these times kids are nervous. They come in first and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. Maybe this is my first time really away from my parents, you know. being with other kids besides my teammates and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden this thing comes up, they're like, woo. And then
Yeah.
to leave that same way, now I can be like, on the way home, it's not just like, oh, well, I'm so tired now from camp. It's like, now I'm excited. Hey, I'm on my way home. We left with energy and stuff like that. So to me, that's one of the things that really is touching, but also, at least on the coach's side, is um, the intentional connections that are made, when we kind of have those like coaches kind of the morning kind of talks that we kind of do and kind of talk about what your goals are. I remember writing, getting married and stuff like that as one of those um on one of those index cards and putting it
Mhm.
up on the wall,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
being able to kind of, see like, hey, what, that goal was achieved.
Mhm.
And this is kind of where I laid the foundation as a thought here, right?
Mhm.
And then, I think even just connections, like me getting to where I am now was because of a Flip Fest connection. It was my, previous coaching partner, was connected to the head coach that I was under, came to our camp, and so on and so forth. So it's
Mhm.
been such a great, place for that, as well. And I would encourage any other coaches who, need somewhere to just kind of go to connect with other, especially there's a plethora of coaches, because, each week there's a lot, and there's some who
Mhm.
come with their kids just to learn, some who come as coaches. But again, you never know where it'll take you, right?
Yeah, no, and that's exactly right. Like I said before, it's just as much for the coaches as it is for the campers, because the coaches are those people that I have so much respect for, that go back to their gyms and really put in the hard day-to-day work with these kids to not only get them to be great gymnasts, but really to shape them as amazing human beings. So we're trying to motivate that process also. Um, and it's Flip Fest is really, it's one big support group. It's like we
Yeah.
always say, and you have people here that you can turn to, and especially in this day and age, people need to know that they're loved, and people need to know they have people to talk to and turn to. And Flip Fest is kind of that conduit to have people meet and that share a common bond, and then hopefully start a friendship and have something that takes that feeling year round for them, not just for 1 week.
Yeah. No, I agree. And how many other like full-time staff members do you guys have that help you kind of run the camp, either right now, like throughout the year, and then typically during a summer? Say we'll just talk about Flip Fest Gymnastics part. How
Yeah.
many staff do you guys have throughout the summer?
So I mean, full time staff. You just have uh, myself and John, Kristen Osh, um, O'Shields Jones, and then Brian Jones, her husband. And then you have Mr. Craig, who does our maintenance, and Lorne McAllister, who does all of our registration. And then I don't think I'm leaving anybody out. And then we bring people on to kind of supplement that in the summertime. So in the summertime during actual camp, we could have anywhere from 50 to 70 staff members between, all the coaches and all the activities and dining hall and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of transitioning into I guess yourself a little bit. I'll kind of start from where you kind of grew up, and then we'll kind of go in, we'll evolve it into kind of your thought process about college gymnastics and your Olympic career. But you had mentioned earlier that you were in LA,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was kind of doing some research prior to your dad and your grandfather and one of your brothers, or your
Mm-hmm.
brother's an actor, correct? Or
Yeah.
were actors?
And my mom
Oh, okay.
and my great grandfather. So there's a, yeah. It was in our family from the very beginning. And my grandfather he was actually a very big actor. Did over 100 movies. He did Paths of Glory with Rita Hayworth, and he did Gilda with Rita Hayworth, Paths of Glory with Kirk Douglas. Those were probably his biggest movies. If you've ever seen Shawshank Redemption, in the movie scene when Morgan Freeman asks for the poster of Rita Hayworth, and he says, "Oh, hold on, this is my favorite part," and they go to the movie, and it's an old movie. That's my grandfather that comes in and says, "Gilda, are you decent?" So I didn't know that when I first saw that movie. And then my dad said, "You know, your grandfather's in that movie." And I said, "That's my favorite movie." But now it's really my favorite movie because my grandfather's in it. So yeah, it's cool. It was cool growing up in that environment. I think there was a lot of motivation for me that came from growing up in Santa Monica, in the Hollywood area, just because, I saw so many success stories at the highest level, and I also saw so many non-success stories that never made it. I saw the full spectrum.
Yeah.
My best friend in grade school since third grade was Stephen Gordy, who was Berry Gordy's son, who Berry Gordy's the founder of Motown, Jackson 5, Diana Ross, all those people. So, he started Motown with $800 out of a house in Detroit.
Wow.
So that makes an impression on you as a young kid of like, oh, that's how you gotta start somewhere. Everybody thinks these people that do these amazing things are just like, oh, it just happened. They just walked into it.
Yeah.
It starts like you're doing with this podcast. It starts putting yourself out there and getting your dream out there and working at it. And I saw that at an early age, and I was always very just mesmerized by that. So I think that had a big part of my success in my life.
Yeah. And what kind of things that did your parents and your, especially your parents teach you that kind of influence your career as an athlete? Because obviously, from what I know, and I don't know like the day-to-day grind of being an actor, but sometimes you're on set for a long time and you're shooting scenes, multiple times, and we get to enjoy the theater and having the DVDs or streaming it now, right? And we don't see how much work goes into it, and even the sacrifices that could have been, and we can even talk about, with their work scheduled, if it caused them to not be at your competition, or if they sacrificed to be able to be there, kind of what did your parents kind of teach you that influenced your sports career?
I think most of it was just, there are some things they've said to me over my lifetime, but for me, it's just example, seeing the example. My parents divorced when they were 3. My mom was a single mom. My dad remarried very early. Both great parents, very different. Probably should have never gotten married in the first place, but very different. My mom was, love, no matter what. And like, oh, I just ran over the dog. It's okay, honey. It was like she just. Or my dad was a disciplinarian and very, regimented. And I really took from both of those angles of my life, but at the same time, they were both consistent. My mom was a consistent hard worker who raised 2 children in Los Angeles, being a fit model, which is where you companies try their clothes on you and stuff, and you make sure that they're working and all that stuff, and sometimes model them in a show. She was an actress. She was a real estate agent. She was an artist. She did whatever she had to do to get by. And I don't know how she did it. She did all that and drove me to gymnastics every single day, which in Los Angeles is not an easy I did gymnastics at one point in my life in Culver City, which is sometimes a 30-45 minute drive with traffic. So she was just a worker. But there was never any complaining. there was never, I mean, like, oh, it was just always had a good attitude. And she always just got up and did what she loved to do. And she would get some big breaks. She'd do some big TV shows or get a big commercial, and that would carry us for a while. And then she'd get another one, So that really made an impression on me. And then my dad was just very consistent in what he did. I think the biggest thing that stepped out in my dad is my dad made a couple movies early on in his life that did really well. And then he really he volunteered at the local playhouse, and then he played tennis every day. I mean, literally since the time that I can remember of any memories of my life, my dad played tennis. And he did that all the way up until he's 91 right now. I think he might have taken a break at maybe 88 or 89. He stopped. So almost through his entire 80s, he did that. And, that to me is dedication and consistency. And he loved it. And that's what it takes to be good at something, is that constant drive to just get up and do what you need to do every day to get, he wanted that perfect forehand. He chased it his whole life, never gave up. So yeah, I think those are the things that stick out to me in my childhood.
That's good. And so your gymnastics career, where did you start, and when did you kind of know you were, good at it and really start to get into the point where, you obviously made to the Olympics? Kind of talk about that process from, beginning and then to, being on the 96 Olympic team.
Yeah. So I started gymnastics when I think I was around 5 or 6 years old. And I went to Broadway Gymnastics School in Santa Monica. It was on 5th and Broadway, right there in Santa Monica. And immediately I just kind of fell in love with it. And I don't ever remember not being a gymnast in my entire life. Everything else, like before that, I just don't have any recollection of it. And the Olympics came to Los Angeles in 1984. And that made a huge impact on my life. I didn't even know what the Olympics were at the time. I was 9 years old. And I remember my dad explaining it to me of, the whole world is going to come here and they're all going to compete to be the best in their sport. And he took me to see the Olympic torch being brought into Santa Monica, up the Santa Monica incline. And it's actually really cool. If you search John MacCready, LA Times, you'll see none other than, this is really funny, O.J. Simpson bringing in the Olympic torch. And my brother and I on the barricade just staring at him as that flame came up at 9 years old. And as soon as I saw that, and then sat there on television, because my mom couldn't afford tickets to get there to see gymnastics. My dad took me to see boxing, but we couldn't afford to see gymnastics. So I watched it on television, and as soon as those the 84 men's Olympic team who won the gold medal, and when I saw them on TV walk in, it was at Pollard Pavilion at UCLA, walk in and put their arm in the air, and everyone just started chanting USA, USA. I was like, I want to do that. Yeah. And so from that point on, it was like, I'm going to be in the Olympics. And I didn't really know what I was saying, but then other people was like, you could be in the Olympics. Like, they started telling me, like, you have talent. And it just started kind of growing from there. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but, it just progressed from there, and I never stopped.
I love it. What was your favorite event to train, and what was your best event?
I really liked high bar and floor. High bar, I just loved the feeling of it. It was very freeing. I mean, I remember still just jumping up and grabbing the bar for your first go at it for that day. Just that freeing feeling of just swinging around the bar and turning and blind change and dismount. And then when I learned a Kovacs, which is a double back over the bar, I never and then you recatch, I never in my life thought I'd be able to do anything like that. And then not only did I do it, but I actually became pretty consistent at it, which I was shocked at that also. And there's nothing better than having that feeling of coming over the bar, flying, and then, catching it again. And,
Yeah.
as a kid, you always want to learn how to fly. And that's really the closest you get.
Yeah. Was college gymnastics ever in your your path of what you did? And
Oh, yeah.
was it something you ever and when you did, what kind of sparked you wanting to do that?
Well, I mean, I grew up right by UCLA, and UCLA at the time was Peter Vidmar, Tim Daggett, who were all in the '84 men's Olympic team. So I wanted to, of course, go to UCLA. Later, I learned you had to actually be smart to go to UCLA, so that was all out the window. But I really I wanted to do college gymnastics, and I actually was about to. I was verbally committed to Ohio State, and Miles Avery was the assistant coach at the time. Peter Corman was the head coach, and Miles came out. I was living in San Diego at the time. I moved away from home when I was, I think, 13 or 14 years old. And it was Steve Butcher, who became my guardian and my coach. And really, I would have never made it without him. He was an integral part of my life. And he got me not only to not quit gymnastics, because that was one of the times in my life I was just like done with it, to then learn how to have a normal life and still be a good gymnast, but still have a social life and stuff. And so Ohio State came out, Miles came out and saw me at the gym and everything, and he basically offered me a spot on the team and a scholarship and everything, and I said I'm in, and it was a done deal. I was like, this is amazing, and so I had the Ohio State hat, the sweatshirt. There was another guy at my school. His name was Leon Bender, who was a friend of mine, and he was a football player, and he got a scholarship to Washington, and we were the two kids getting a scholarship out of high school, and it was in the paper and all that stuff. And I mean, I was like, let's go. Right. And then Butcher came to me one day in the gym, and he said, hey, I just want to let you know, Ohio State, it's off the table. They signed Blaine Wilson and Drew Durbin. And I'm, what? And they're like, because my SAT scores weren't in yet. I hadn't taken the SAT yet. So I was kind of devastated a little bit. I mean, that's kind of hard. And then Steve he said to me, hey, they're doing this new program at the Olympic Training Center, and you can go there and live in Colorado Springs, and they'll pay for your school. You don't do college gymnastics, but they'll pay for your school. And I was like, all right, well, let's do that. So, and I can't remember why it was that easy to make that decision, but I was the first resident at the Olympic Training Center for gymnastics that came out of high school instead of college. So you had other residents that were there, like JD Reeve and Marshall Nelson, who were gymnasts at the time, who had been there during high school, but you never had anybody opt to not go to college and instead go to the Olympic Training Center. And so that was a big start of my life. And there was a lot of things integral in that, because I think if I would have done college gymnastics, me personally, I don't think I would have made the Olympic team. And that was my goal. For some people, it's fantastic. Like, it's the best thing for them. But for me, I'm dyslexic. School was hard for me. I think college was, carrying a load and being on a team was going to be very hard, because I had to put a lot of work into school. And I think I'm a single focused person. Like, here's my goal and go. And I don't know if I had also the goal of like being a gymnast at Ohio State, competing for Ohio State, trying to win a national championship and trying to go to the Olympics. I don't know if that would have worked for my makeup.
Yeah.
So I think that was God kind of directing me in a certain way that day, knowing, what my goals were. And then having Vitaly Marinich, Ron Brandt was the coach there, who was very integral in my life. And then we got an assistant coach, Vitaly Marinich, who's from Ukraine, who was very integral, became my coach and really changed my gymnastics to get me to the point that I needed to be at for the Olympics. And then I think 1993 or 4 was my first U.S. national championships. They were in Nashville, Tennessee. And I think I got like 23rd place or something. And I made the senior developmental team, which means you're not really good, but we'll keep you around to see if you develop. And yeah, so 3 years later, I went from 23rd to 3rd in the country, and made the Olympic team, and which was the coolest thing because, my original dream of the Olympics and where it started was watching the 84 men walk into the Apollo Pavilion chanting USA in your country. And then I had the honor of having the next Olympics, and the only other Olympics so far, Summer Olympics, that has been in America, which was in Atlanta. And I got to stand there while they pulled the curtain aside, and we walked into the Georgia Dome, 35,000 people all on their feet chanting USA. And I put my hand in the air and waved just like they did in 84, and it was like full circle, my vision came true, exactly what I wanted to do. And I think that's important, visualizing what you want to do is and where you want to be. I visualized that moment my whole life, so yeah, it wasn't the original journey that was in my mind, but it was the one, thank the Lord, that worked, because it really shaped me as a person and as a gymnast.
Right. Now, some of the things you had mentioned earlier that you're kind of involved in, like getting into real estate and obviously getting into the camps, kind of business and running that, where academics was hard, where did you develop and how did you develop the skills and the passions to kind of do the things that you're doing now? Because not all the time, but, going to school and really learning formally how to do certain things seems like it's the way you're supposed to do things, or what society may say has to happen. But when you have a lot of conversations with people, a lot of times they have, stories where they have certain things, like you said, being dyslexic or, academics, it was just not easy, but yet they have, a success story in life, and they're able to do things outside of what, formal learning will say that you need to do. Can you kind of talk about your development in those passions and how, you kind of use your disadvantages to create advantages to where you are now?
Well, I think what you just said was the main key in that. With me being dyslexic, it was never and school being harder for me and having to, go through a different path in school and learn differently than other kids. It wasn't it wasn't a negative thing in my life. It was a positive thing in my life, which I think is how you should look at everything. It was just, hey, I'm different. I'm different. I have to figure out a different way to get through this because I was born different, which I love. Now, it was harder. My wife graduated with a business degree and never barely had to crack a book or go to class, where me, it was like to pass statistics, it was like, here we go, like stay up. It was like I really had to work really, really hard, but that was just how my brain was made up. But I never harped on that. I was never like, I'm not going to be successful. In fact, but other people did. My dad was always worried about me. I mean, out of everyone in my family, he was like, what are we going to do about John? And I just think it's really important for people to know that, everybody's path is different. College is very important. Education is very important, but people learn a different way. Some people learn in all different ways. And, our goal is to contribute and make the world better for the people around us. That's really what we're here for.
Right.
And so you're getting your education to do that with whatever you're going to do, be a teacher, be in marketing, be an attorney, a doctor, whatever you're doing, you really should be taking that to make the world a better place and help people around you.
Right.
So however you get to that goal is how you get to that goal. And for me, for some reason, I was born with kind of a street smart sense of just really seeing how things work and understanding it immediately and then being able to do it.
Yeah.
Whether it's fixing something like a car or whatever, my mind just works that way, to the point where, like Roethlisberger and my wife sometimes are like, what goes on in your mind? Like, how do but it just naturally is like that.
Yeah.
But and John's like that a lot also, not as much as my mind. But Lacey and him, their mind is different in other ways. My wife, but it's not like it's better or worse. It's just like we all complement each other.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing, is like you can't do it alone. So everything that I knew I wasn't good at, I made sure I didn't concentrate on it, and I found someone else to do it that I trusted.
Yeah.
And everything I was really good at, I put my head to the grindstone, and I got it done. So everybody's path is different. I think college should always be in your mind. I don't ever think, a lot of times my kids right now, they'll come home to me and they'll say, Dad, I learned this in school today. I'm never going to use it again. And they're probably right. 100%. 99% of the stuff you learn in school, you will never use again, which is true. But what it does is it teaches you how to have a job and get it done.
Yeah.
And it makes you accountable. That's the number one thing I think it does. Now, there are differences where you're going to study to be a doctor or an attorney, and all that. Once you get to that side, you're going to use that stuff again. So there is that side of having that knowledge to be able to retain. But most of the people that I see go and get a degree, they either don't use their degree, or it doesn't really affect what they're doing. They just have a degree.
Yep.
So for me, my daughter's a freshman at UT right now, and she started with business. I think she's going to change it to marketing or something, she mentioned. But for me, this is for her to go and grow up and learn how to be a responsible adult and learn how to have a task at hand. And I have a test this day, and I got to learn this and that and this. And that's the number one thing that I think is so important about college. Some people go through that process or maybe don't, and go, it's not for me.
Yeah.
And they might be right. I think one of the greatest things that's happening right now in this world is people pushing kids to trade schools, to take that pressure off them of like, oh, you got to go to a college, a 4-year school. I mean, a lot of people make very good money at being a plumber and love it.
Yeah.
It's like, and if your mind is at that, how cool that someone went, hey, right out of high school, here's this class, go here for whatever, 8 weeks or a year, and then you can start your own plumbing business and be off to the races.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But I think until you get to that stage, you need to look at every avenue. Don't cancel any of them out.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's one of the hard things I think too, sometimes is the question, what do you want to do? Who do you want to be? Who do you want to become? A lot of times it's hard because people will make up stuff because they either think that's what people want to hear, because really what they want to do may sound outlandish, right? And we listen so much to societal standards and requirements and stuff like that, instead of thinking about, who am I? What am I passionate about? What do I love to do? And what am I good at? Right. And then just do that for the rest of your life, because if you're able to do that and make, a living for you and your family, and feel comfortable and help other people, like you had mentioned, I think that's good. And if you feel like going to college is that way, making sure that you're really understanding what you're trying to do in that investment, right? That you're putting in, but also knowing that, yes, there's, you don't want to waste your time while in college, but allowing yourself to explore, because, just like you had mentioned, your daughter had a vision of doing business, and maybe it was a class that she had, was like, hey, maybe I could do marketing, or maybe
Mhm.
paying attention to the trends of what's happening with social media, or even just marketing and stuff like that, is, saying, hey, maybe marketing is the way to go, and never knowing what really, is um being so fixated on, hey, this is what I have to do because this is what I had set
Sometimes you
out to
need
do.
to take a left-hand turn. You thought you were
Yeah.
going to go right, and sometimes you got to know. And I think that's one thing I've been good in my life of understanding and going, and is giving up that turn. Like, no, I got to go right, and then I can quickly go, nope, I got to go left. You know, um, and I think you know there's two things us as human beings want and we strive for. The number one thing I think is acceptance. Everybody wants to be accepted. If you
Yep.
say you don't, you're in the minority. And what does accepted mean? It means you have purpose. It means that you are contributing. It means people recognize you. Now there's a balance to that, and my favorite word to teach my kids is balance. Like, always keep balance in mind, because you could say I want to be accepted, and that goes too far, and then
Yeah.
you're relying on everybody else's attention, for
Yeah.
what to you, but really the number one thing about first being accepted is learning how to accept yourself. You can't love somebody else if you don't love yourself. That's just number one. So everybody wants to be accepted, and then everybody wants to be entertained. Everybody. We all want to be entertained. And
Mm.
you say, oh, entertained, like you want to watch a TV show, you want to watch everything. 99% of the decisions we make in our life, you have a day off on a Sunday, or you're on vacation. Vacation's a better example. If you're on vacation, every decision you're making on vacation is how to entertain yourself and your family while you're there.
Yeah.
But it's no different in your life. You want to be entertained. So to understand that and recognize that helps you make your choices better, because if you're going to go into something that's not going to entertain you in your life, then that's not what you need to be going into, you know, because that's what we're here for. We want to
Yeah.
be entertained, stimulated, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um, Now, a lot of times people, there's this one video, this guy says, follow your passion's the worst thing you could ever tell anybody, which I actually
Mm.
love the video. You probably can just find it on YouTube or something, just say follow your passion speech. But he says it's the worst thing possible, because he says that might be not what you is your passion, but it's your gift. And if you conquer that, it will lead to your passion.
Yeah. Can you say that again? Because when you said it, it froze.
Yeah. So he said, we're all born with a gift, and you need to find out what that gift is, and you need to exploit that, whether it's your passion or not. Like some people might say, I'm so good at math, but I don't want to be an accountant. But that's clearly what you're good at.
Yeah.
Well, you might need to exploit that to then be able to do your passion later.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's
Yep.
like there is, again, a balance to that of, a lot of people will just stay going, I haven't found my passion yet, so they don't do anything. It's like, man, you have to, success will lead you to your passion, and
Yeah.
so luckily I in my life I was passionate about gymnastics. I loved it, and now what I'm doing I love. So, but I think that's important for people to know a lot of times, is if you are blessed to have a gift that is just glaring at you, but it doesn't interest you, really take a look at that, because it could lead you into that interest that you don't even know you're looking for.
Right. No, I think that's right on. Because the way you said, the two things, like your acceptance, because I kind of say the same thing. You know, everyone wants to be liked, loved, accepted, right? And then what you said, everybody wants to be entertained. You know, I've never really thought of it like that. So, you know, and it's so true. And I think that's why now that we have so much access to entertainment, we get so fixated, right? And
Yeah.
and can become distracted. And
Mm.
where you had mentioned how you talk to your kids, having a balance, right? And understanding too much of entertainment of a certain kind, right? And
Yeah.
knowing if it's distracting you or if it's really benefiting you, right?
Yeah.
And doing, you know, engaging in entertainment that you can learn from, you know.
Mhm.
And as you said, if I am in school, like why certain teachers probably get more or better reviews is how they engage the classroom, right? Because they're
Yeah.
entertaining the class and their students and keeping them
Yeah.
engaged. It's not just
Yeah.
up there, you know, 2 + 2 is 4, and then
Yeah.
I took these apples and -3. You know, it's just like, okay, no. But if you
Yeah,
make
the
it
teachers that don't even, when you're working with them, you don't even know you're learning. You know, you're
right,
so into it, you're just like, oh, that's cool, and you're like, oh, I'm doing it. You know,
yeah,
um, but yeah, I think it's an interesting thing is like the entertainment side of life of, you know, you watch now when you plan your day and stuff, it's really, you know, how, like, if you have to run errands, like, "Ah, I gotta do this and I gotta do that, I gotta do this," you'll still try to like figure out how to make that entertaining. You're like, well, okay, but then I'm gonna go get lunch here. And now you're excited. You're like, you know,
yes,
"Oh, I gotta get ham, but then I'm gonna get that hamburger," you know, whatever it is, you know, you'll structure things around. And that's it's just part of our human nature. But now, because like you said, technology and these phones, I mean, you're constantly inundated with that, you know.
yeah. No, and it's cool to see how you have used some of your passions, like, you know, from what I notice, you know, you're an entertainer in how you kind of run the camp, but also, you know, you've done some of those kind of tours with gymnastics, you know, that have been kind of popular, which is great because, you know, in the sport of gymnastics, there's not a lot of avenues to really make money or to really
Yeah.
create. And so, you know, those tours have been probably a great thing to do to kind of give a different perspective, especially to the non like the people who don't watch gymnastics on a regular basis, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so being able to, you know, present it in a different way so that
Yeah.
they can engage with it. It's not, you know, super formal, right? And and hey, I don't have no idea what the skill is or this and that, or I just see, you know, the athletes just flying over this bar or doing all these crazy flips and everyone's like, whoa, you know, things that I can't do, right? um I think, you know, you're a great example of doing that. And and obviously you probably, you know, learned some of that stuff knowing what your family lineage kind of did with acting and stuff like that. You know, your job is literally to find a way to um entertain other
Yeah.
people when they either go out to watch you or now, you know, when they're sitting at home either by themselves or with somebody else, you know, group of friends, you know, and think that you are engaging enough to be able to stay tuned and care
Yeah.
about what you're doing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to be an actor. That was what I wanted to do my whole life. And I actually went after it a little bit after I retired. I didn't really like the life. I didn't like the world. I didn't like the the environment of being in that environment. And the rejection's hard too. It's very
Mm,
difficult to, you know, put yourself out there so many times. I mean, every actor, no matter how amazing you are, if you're, you know, Julia Roberts and Tom Cruise or what, all those people, I'm telling you, they went through a ton of rejection. It's just part of it, you know, and it's
yeah,
a difficult process of it.
yeah,
Um, but I decided really quickly, I was like, it's not really for me. But just because you're not going to be an actor in Hollywood doesn't mean you're not going to be an entertainer. I love entertaining. I love seeing people laugh. I love seeing people smile. And that's Flip Fest it's an entertainment. It's a show. Like you said, it starts and it ends. There's a beginning and end, and in between that is a whole lot of entertainment. And that's really what I enjoy is if you've been to our dance at Flip Fest, it's not just a normal dance, it's like something you'd see in Vegas for kids, like
Yeah.
it's kids club, because you want them to see that excitement of all those kids being together, and the joy it brings to everybody, and the costumes and everything.
Right. Now, the music part, you had mentioned you kind of run a huge guitar kind of
Mhm.
kind of not really convention, but
Street.
retreat. Yes, that's the word. Um, do you personally have passions, like musical passions, and do you play music? I know we've talked about this when I was at camp with your son Hudson, who plays. Kind of what is the kind of story behind that, and what's your personal experience? As you see, I have a guitar up here,
Yeah.
so I love music. Not behind me, in front of me, I have a drum set right over there. I have my bass on the wall, and my keyboard and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I'm really passionate about music.
I love music. It's probably my favorite thing in the world, probably, other than my family. I just love what music does. I love how it immediately changes someone's mind, or it changes their mood. I mean, immediately. I don't know of anything else in the world that could change someone's mood as fast as music.
Yeah.
And then some people be like, "Oh, there's a lot of drugs that would," you go, you get a surgery and you get put underneath. It's like that changes your mood pretty quick, but not as fast as music. Like the minute someone hears a beat or something, you'll see their head bob, or you see that it changes everything, and it can immediately make someone sad, happy, whatever. So I think our whole life is a musical soundtrack, and I love the creative process of it. I love what it takes to learn an instrument and how hard it is. On the same side of that, I'm awful at music. I can't. I'm trying to learn guitar right now. Hudson's teaching me, and I feel like I'm a special ed kid. It's like I told him last night. It's like, oh my gosh, because my mind does not, and my fingers just don't go as fast as his. And he doesn't understand his gift that much. I mean, when he was 8 years old, he started. I mean, immediately it was like, he picked everything up, and it was just,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever get to that level he was at when he was 8.
Yeah.
But I love the process, and I love musical instruments. They're like a piece of art, you
Yeah.
know. You hang it on the wall. What else could you hang on the wall that actually does something? You know,
Yeah.
People go spend all this money on art, and it just sits there. Now it makes you happy and you look at it and it's beautiful, but you could take that same piece of art, because that's artwork. I mean, some
Right.
put a lot of work into that, and you can
Right.
take it off the wall and it makes a sound.
Yeah.
So it's cool, and to have a son that is so talented at it. It's just my way of like being able to be a part of that. You know,
Yeah.
it,
No, I
it
love that.
it's fun.
Yeah. And being in Tennessee, and in Knoxville, you get a lot of music, right? Especially um, country music, and there's probably a lot of other styles too, just because of and me being in Austin as well. They're not really Austin, but near Austin, and your daughter being at now UT, and when you said UT, you mean University of Tennessee, yes? Because
Yeah,
when I thought about UT,
that's the only one.
uh, you'd have to argue with the ones over here. Like for me, like I'm from Minnesota, and so we call the University of Minnesota U of M, right? But if you think of, when you say U of M, a lot of people actually think about Michigan, just because
Yeah,
Michigan's obviously a better university, at least on the sports,
yeah,
overall. And so I understand. I understand that. But going back to the music part, being in Tennessee, there's a lot of opportunity to go see live shows or even just kind of be a part of the music scene and stuff like that. And I'm sure you probably indulge in a lot of that.
Oh, we go to concerts all the time. Yeah, I love it. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of country music. Obviously Nashville is the country music capital of the world. So there, you could go to a ton of country music. But outside of Nashville, it's a big mix. I mean, you'd be hard pressed tonight. I mean, there's Cotton Eye Joe's, which is here in Knoxville, that is like a country, music venue. But a lot of times, so like you could go there. But a lot of the places around are just indie bands, different. And there's a lot of people that come out of here. Obviously Morgan Wallen was from Knoxville, and what's that? There's another girl, can't think of her name right now. Now those are more country, but then there's a lot of bands that are kind of growing out of here that are not country.
Yeah.
So it's a mix.
Yeah. No, music, I feel the same way. Especially when I'm playing and engaging in music, I can be there for a long time and I can really lock in. And, I think it's a huge component to entertainment as well. I think not only just using music, but I think we do things at a cadence that's similar to music to kind of get people engaged, because, the tone of your voice, the rate of speed that you talk, again, it's all these things that kind of go back to how music sounds to us and kind of gets us engaged, right? And if someone is monotone like this, it's almost like if you're not into opera, it'd be like listening to opera, which is just like, and people would be like, all right, I'm going to tune that up just because it may sound annoying, right? But if you can kind of have like a rhythm and a tempo to what you're doing and have these breaks or have these whatever that really kind of get people engaged, and then you kind of get back into it with energy, it goes back to what you said, to the entertainment of people and wanting to be entertained.
Yeah.
Now, kind of last kind of topic, talking about college sports or gymnastics specifically. I know Roethlisberger, he's more engaged in the college world with his commentating and stuff like that. And with you kind of having the opportunity to do college, how the offer to be able to do college gymnastics, at least men's gymnastics, and then obviously life took you a different route, and going into Olympics, kind of what is your thought process of where men's gymnastics is in college and even just in general, and then kind of what's your thought about women's gymnastics and how it also is influencing the world of gymnastics, both because now in women's gymnastics, more than any time that I can remember, there's athletes going to college gymnastics and trying to go to world teams or Olympic teams, or they were on Olympic teams and coming to college gymnastics and either going back to that, elite world, or, have made such an impact on college gymnastics. And before, there were, former Olympians and stuff like that who were part of college gymnastics teams, but I feel like it's at a different level now.
Yeah. I mean, I think women's gymnastics has never been stronger. Obviously, you got Simone, who's the greatest gymnast ever in this, she's actually still competing. So that's helped the sport a lot. And the women have always been good. I mean, you just look back, you got Simone, Nastia, Carly Patterson. I mean, I'm leaving a bunch out, but they've had a huge run of not only all around Olympic champions, but also team Olympic champions. So that's great. And then you have women's gymnastics in college is also really, I think, at the best place it's been. It's getting more TV coverage than it's ever got. It's growing. And I think the reason why is because what we talked about before is everybody wants to be entertained. So now every sport looks to entertain. I don't care what you're at. If you're at, a bowling competition, they are going to try to, now they got a producer, a field producer, and they got the DJ and the music, and it's just a different world now. It's not just about the sport, it's about the experience.
Yeah.
And I think women's gymnastics has really caught on to that and done a great job, and TV's picked up on it, and their audience likes it, and it's really grown.
Yeah.
Now men's gymnastics, I don't know. It's sad. I don't. It's and it's not just men's gymnastics. It's every sport that doesn't make a ton of money or have a big audience. And I don't know what's going to happen with those sports, because college sports in general, not just gymnastics, is dwindling if you're a sport that doesn't make money, or at least doesn't lose money. And that's sad, because I think they're forgetting what sports is all about and what these sports do. It's worth the investment. If you have whatever team, a wrestling team, a gymnastics team, a swimming team, a lot of these sports are getting canceled, tennis, those people are better and different people coming out of college athletics going into the real world. If they didn't have that, I don't think they'd be as effective. So it's an investment. I don't think people are looking at it that way, because they're just looking at their budgets and the bottom line, and they're just, checking things off. They don't care. And that's sad. It's really sad. I don't know how they're going to stop it. A lot of people are trying. A lot of people are doing a lot of things to turn the tide. I haven't seen the tide turn yet. I hope it does. But people got to fight for it. They got to keep fighting and making sure that they're represented in whatever sport they do, So, and on the same front, it's weird because that's kind of happening in colleges, but you're also seeing a rebirth of sports all around the country. So it's weird. It's kind of happening in the world, but it's not happening in college. I mean, look at the Olympics. They're adding all these sports, and flag football and breakdancing, and now lacrosse is getting huge, and lacrosse has been growing for years, but it's gotten a lot bigger. So sports that you never really would hear of are growing now in the world that used to just be baseball, soccer, and football. But it's not translating to the college scene as much as I'd like to see. Other than women's stuff like women's lacrosse, they're picking up a lot more women's sports, but it's just the nature we're in, and hopefully we figure out a fix for it. But money drives it all.
Right, and in at least in college, not necessarily college gymnastics, but a cool thing that has happened on the women's side, at least, is acro tumbling.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Oh man, if you watch what these women can do and the strength that they have, and the skills that they can do. I was going through, because we had a athlete who actually, we've had a handful of athletes that I have worked with who just committed to either inaugural programs or are at programs. Like, one is at Baylor. And so I was just kind of looking through their stuff, and I'm like, man, the holds and the stuff that they do with each other, it's crazy. They're like, normally we would see guys, being the bases and throwing them up, and these girls are doing this stuff, and it's incredible, right? And I think it's going to catch on, because there's a lot more programs, and hopefully on my podcast I'm able to start to kind of expose that a little bit more, because it gives an opportunity, just like we talked about, for athletes to be able to keep doing a sport, to have them be better, and hopefully give them a way to get to schools that they may not have ever been able to because of financial reasons or whatever the case may be, or if they just weren't at that caliber to get a college scholarship, but yet they can use their gift and their talents to do acro and tumbling. It'd be kind of cool to see that for, the guy side too. Like sometimes guys don't realize that, hey, if I tumbled, I could go and get a full scholarship as a cheerleader for
Right.
some of these D1 programs, and not think about the stigma of, hey, it's cheerleader, this and that. It's like, if you
Right.
can get your school paid for and do something where you're still part of a team and a community and this and that, why not, right?
Yeah. No, I think acro and tumbling is the best thing they've done in the sport in a long time, because it mixes gymnasts that didn't really want to continue to do gymnastics but didn't want to go into cheerleading, and then cheerleaders that don't really want to cheerlead anymore but still want to do some sort of gymnastics but don't want to do gymnastics, and then dancers, the same thing. They don't really want to, they want to dance but not, they also want to do gymnastics, but they, and acro people, that are doing acro but also, want more of a team atmosphere and not to just do acro. And it just mixes all those things together, and provides an outlet for people that would normally not get an outlet. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah. No. Well, I appreciate your time. Do you have anything that you want to kind of leave the viewers and listeners kind of, about you, about Flip Fest, anything like that? And I'll also plug in Flip Fest information and stuff like that, like their dates and stuff like that in the description. But is there anything you want to leave the viewers?
I'll leave the
Listeners?
viewers with the same thing I leave the campers with at Flip Fest every year. I leave them with three things, and the first thing is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I think it's important in life to remember that success takes little steps. It takes little steps over and over and over to get to that final destination. We as humans are very impatient sometimes, and I have to remind myself that on the daily when I'm trying to do things. The next thing is love many, trust few, and always paddle your own canoe. I think too many people in this world are not taking personal responsibility and admitting when they're wrong, and understanding that you're going to be wrong and it's okay to admit it, and that's part of life, and just taking responsibility and saying that was my bad, I can do better. So I really stress to people that, love many, trust few, always paddle your own canoe. It's your canoe, nobody else's. You get in there and you direct it and you paddle it, and don't look for blame on anybody else. And then the last one is, you can't change your circumstances, but you can change how you react to them. I tell our campers all the time that when something bad happens, you might get upset, you might be off for a little bit, but as soon as you can get your mind to switch to, how can I turn this into a positive, and how can I benefit from this, and what can I learn from this, and how can I be stronger from this? As soon as you get your mind in that, the faster you get your mind to that side of things, I think is the key to just getting through life and continuing to learn and getting better.
Yeah. No, that's good. Well, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate those three insights, and hope the best for you as you kind of get this break right now from the camp, and as you guys kind of ramp back up, in the late winter or early spring. It depends on where you're at, right? In March. And so I appreciate your time. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of Heated Conversations. It was a great conversation talking to John MacCready, and, those two things that he mentioned, that we all want to be accepted and we all want to be entertained, which, especially that second part is so true and is not a way I thought of it. And, being intentional about, those types of things that you're doing, the people that you're allowing yourself to kind of be accepted by, and also, what you're presenting and what you're being entertained by. Remember to share, to subscribe, to like, and comment. Thank you again for tuning to another episode of Heated Conversations. I'll see you guys on the next one.